Right. Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to talk about chapter 6, which is titled Dhyan Yog in Hindi and the practice of meditation in the English version. To remind everyone, we are doing these sessions on Gita, where we read one chapter at a time and we discuss that chapter. Today is chapter 6, episode 6, and you will find the link of the book in the description below if you want to read the book along with us. But so Nadine, do you want to start with your, like, if you were able to read the chapter and you have some thoughts to share on the chapter?
Yeah, maybe we're digging deeper into it during our conversation, but what I feel as a entry point, maybe, it's beautifully described what meditation means, that it is about reaching and realizing our truest self, which is interesting that as adults we need that, because I think in one or two sentences it also described that we're coming pure into this world when we are born, that somehow some of us are growing up in families where it's difficult to be yourself because there are so many different demands and dynamics. So we're learning adaptive behaviors, which may a lot of times not be in line with our truest version. So I think meditation offers an entry point to come back to this. And I think that's what this chapter is about. And I would also say that this is just a tool to get there, because living the truest self is not only happening during your meditation time in a day or so. The actual self-realization comes when you are in the middle of your daily life. And then you'll see if you're really true to yourself. Meditation is for me just creating for you the space to get there, probably. But then it's about practicing it throughout. That would be my first entry point for this conversation.
Yeah, I think, yeah, that's very interesting. Like, for me, I was very nice, like, till this point, I felt the book felt a little repetitive. We were talking about this in the previous chapter, but it's interesting that it now says, okay, we have been talking about selfless service, we have been talking about path of action, but now if you've kind of done that and you've reached, so this is where it will be very interesting to understand what it means that if you've reached the summit of the mountain or you reached at some level, then the next step is to get peace and stillness within you, which is now through dhyan yoga, right, through meditation. and and it also actually very clearly says that this is superior now in the book somewhere, that it's superior to selfless service, but it feels there's also a that the path is through selfless service and then you reach here. um, and then I think it talks about the single pointedness, which will be interesting to talk about, as a way of meditation, and how you have to keep your body posture, which is nice, like it's a little more descriptive. um, and I think I found that last part very interesting, where because it was like, as I was reading the chapter, it was the same question I thought, and I then Arjuna asks that question, that because it says that you need to have self-control for you to truly be able to do this. And then Arjuna asks, but what if I don't have self-control, and do I just end up wasting all this effort? And it's very interesting that it says, no, that any effort is not wasted. And then, as you said, I think, Nadine, which is, it's not easy to do meditation, like in your normal life, but it's kind of answering it in a way. It's saying, uh, as you make progress, the next kind of birth you take will happen in a place which will allow you, in a home which allows that to happen more for you. So that was very interesting for me personally, that and so and then that it's happening over multiple lifetimes. Uh, so yeah, so I I think this is a little more easier chapter. I don't know why, but I felt it's easier to grasp for me. Um, uh, it didn't feel that abstract to me. So, Kabir, what are your thoughts? What is your interpretation?
I think we both have summarized it pretty well. I would maybe paraphrase it, not say something very different. But I feel meditation can be put slightly in a poetic way as consciousness falling in love with itself. So as we follow Karma, selfless service, operating in a detached way in the world, certain tendencies keep burdening, our certain desires keep expressing themselves out, and uh, and it leaves a space within which is becoming quieter and quieter and quieter. And as we have all, anyone who has been on the journey of self-discovery realizes that there are times then that we just seek the solitude. And it's a very positive thing. It's completely different from loneliness. We don't want to be around noises, and that's why how this chapter talks about meditation of finding a place which is quiet and then sitting upright quietly, just focusing on oneself. Uh, those outer dimensions are not so important, but it does indicate that you are not dancing and talking, and you're not extroverted. Your attention is introverted. And like I would put it, consciousness is becoming aware of itself. It is fulfilled, just being absorbed within self. And at one point in the chapter, I believe it uses the term uh, using these cells, you get to yourselves. It becomes difficult to communicate sometimes because meditation at this point is something of a very unique experience in the sense that everything we ever experience phenomenally is a subject object relationship. Even when we are observing breath, there is an object, breath, and there is a subject, our awareness, which is aware of the object. And as we go deeper into meditation, the self, the awareness becomes aware of itself. So there is no object really. Subject becomes the object. So self becomes aware of the self. And it becomes very difficult then in the language to communicate it. So yes, in a way, why I feel Krishna saying it's superior is because uh, any path that we start, path of devotion or path of karma, is sort of preparing us for this point. And it's not so much that you have to one day conceptually decide that, okay, I did karma yoga, I did yoga of devotion, and now I should sit and meditate. I would say that, in fact, you may be doing karma yoga, you may be doing uh, of devotion or any other path, but you would feel this longing to just be within you and just sit quietly and up. It's like your attention falls onto itself. It wants to go within. You have this urge, the longing. And even though you have never studied meditation or been guided in this way, that urge is very organic, which comes from within, that longing just to be with yourself. And that's why I use the term consciousness falling in love with itself. So, and the experience that you have there is you realizing your true nature beyond body mind. It's full of joy. You realize you are an eternal being. You realize you are more than body and mind. And then when you come back and put your attention outside and walking around as a person, you have a very different perspective that you gained during this very deep experience. And you realize that your true nature is, in fact, exactly the same in all the beings. And you know that intuitively, not through logical deduction, but you just know intuitively that it's shining through all the beings. And I believe Krishna also talks about that one who starts seeing himself in all the beings or starts seeing me in all the beings is truly got it and is connected with me at all times.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting because so we're talking of meditation again more as an advanced, and especially in the way you talked about it as a milestone more ahead in your journey. But maybe we can go back, and because I feel I started the journey more starting from meditation, and then I felt, okay, I can go more and be more selfless in my action. Uh, so yeah, like, meditation as a tool itself is something a lot of people have become more aware about it. There's a lot more talk about it. So maybe we can talk about that, Kabir, like, and how also maybe differentiating it from yoga, which again sometimes is more physical, like, people understand the word yoga more as a physical exercises. So if we can talk about a little bit about that, and Nadine, maybe also you can share your thoughts on how you started with meditation. Um,
Yeah, I
or
somehow feel that Nadine would do a better job on it than I would.
Sorry,
That
Kabir?
I feel that you would be a better candidate to talk about it, both the yoga aspects and how it affects not just the body but the mind, and then the process of meditation. For example, when you started meditating, how it affects even a beginner who may not yet have such deep experiences that they are beyond body mind, but they may just decide to sit quietly, let's say focus on the breath or something. Maybe I think Shashank wants us to talk a little bit about that process and for someone who is considering meditation. Yes, Shashank?
yeah, like, like how does somebody start with meditation? And just to clarify people how that's different from yoga, and although that is the yoga, at least as we are reading the book, yoga is not used in a more current context, which is physical exercises, right? Like, which at least, and when I started talking about yoga in my school, there was a yoga period, and that period basically meant you sat and did physical exercises in some way, which, right? So I'm just saying, that was your introduction to yoga and meditation also in that context? And if you can share some light on how at least the word yoga within the book is more for meditation, uh, and how basically you started with meditation.
Actually, the book says exactly in this chapter, yoga means wholeness or the process of becoming whole at the deepest spiritual level. That's exactly what it says. And I think this is true. And that means to me also, it doesn't mean that everyone will come to that in the same manner. It's not for everyone the classical meditation will work, classical yoga will work. There are so many different ways how people find their way coming closer to themselves. I think that's why there are so many pathways, even within yoga. I mean, we talked in one of the earlier chapters also how many different paths are there. So I feel this is also something where we all need to check in with ourselves, what action or what non-action brings us closer to ourselves. And for some, it may be easier to start with connecting through their body, because our body has immense knowledge and connection to our soul, to our deepest self, or whatever Krishna you want to call it. While maybe for some people, meditation, like sitting straight and having this posture and all, maybe for some difficult and it comes later or whatsoever. So I think everyone at their stage in life need to find out what pathway it is for them. And as they say in the book, it's definitely about practicing it then, right? It's not like, yeah, although you should really listen to yourself in that pathway too, because some people even get attached to yoga or meditation. I mean, the moment you get attached to the feeling you get when you are in your meditation, then you should also look into if you're on the right path, because that chapter even talks about that. It's not about achieving something. When I sometimes talk to friends and they tell me, I reached another level in meditation now I can sit 15 minutes without a thought. And I'm like, yeah, okay, but otherwise, when you're not in your meditation, you seem to be completely unsettled. So what are you gaining out of achieving 15 minutes without a thought if the rest of the day is completely all over the place? So, one should not mistaken this meditation as an escape or as a thing that you need to achieve to gain another level and then you get reward for it. I think this is again also about, be aware of what is your desired outcome. Are you completely selfless in that practice itself? Or do you want to gain something out of it? Are you wanting to feel something again? and then you're dropping back. So I know a lot of people that have done Vipassana also. They came back with great experience, found themselves, etc., or they saw something for themselves. But then they just dropped back in their daily life, and it's just a memory of where they have felt themselves. So my question is, how do you really integrate it into your life? Whatever you experience in it.
Yeah, I think I have two interesting comments on this, right? So one is when you say, like, even if you're doing for 15 minutes and your day is, let's say, more scattered, I personally feel that's still okay, because if you keep doing it, it will start having an impact on that, because it's kind of like shades of gray. And if, let's say, you are in a lot of gray right now, right? Like, if you're on the lot of the dark side, even if you're doing that for 10 minutes, at least for me, I felt that
So
even,
I didn't mean that it wouldn't have any impact on your daily life. I went more into it from the point of that it's just another achievement. So, it's I meant it in a way
that is my
some
question.
people use that as, oh, I achieved this now, but then this doesn't feel real to me if someone tells me that.
But this is an interesting question there then. Like, let's say even somebody goes with a very selfish intent to do meditation, right? Whatever is the reason to go into it, whether it's to achieve something. But let's say you're actually doing the meditation properly and you do it for a long enough period and you do it. I think that's a bigger problem. So we'll come to that, which is like, how do you make sure you do it regularly? But let's assume somebody goes in with a bad intent, or bad, like there's no bad intent, right? But let's say with a
No.
selfish, and then but still continues to do it for a regular, like, decent amount of time. I have a personal opinion that that will still kind of transform them. So the question is, I agree that there are people who do it but probably doesn't transform them. So are they not doing it correctly, or is the interpretation wrong here, Kabir, that if you keep doing it but it won't transform you? uh does that question make
Yes.
sense?
Yes, it makes sense. I hope I am able to integrate, because I do see Nadine's point also and
Yeah.
yours, and it's not so different. Let's see if we can integrate that. So I feel that yes, there are several levels, and when one starts doing meditation, it is usually from the space of a lot of doing rather than being, and also a lot of attitude of achievement, like one goes about things in the material world. And even though I agree with you, Shashank, that it does have benefit, but I agree with Nadine that it doesn't truly give you the benefit that your
Mm.
sitting time can give you. Does it make sense? So yes, it gives you something, but anyone who has tasted the true transformative benefits of meditative practice would say, yeah, I know some benefit you're getting, but you can get so much more.
Yeah.
Just if you can shift the perspective or attitude of
Mm.
your space when you're sitting. And I
Mm.
may actually, there is a part in this chapter which touched me on that, where Krishna says that anyone, even if they are just inquiring about meditation, even they are superior to someone who are just into rituals. That is very powerful, right? And I feel what Nadine is saying, if I paraphrase it, is that those people who do meditation, and I must add that I have met so many of them over the years. It's just so easy for an egoic mind to do meditation like a ritual.
Yep.
Mm.
So that's what she's sort of warning about. That if you say, okay, with determination, that I'm going to sit here and I am very strong, the sense of I is very strong. They never leave the I, because I is required to achieve something. And then they put their breath or attention at one place with that doing energy. And it doesn't really, again, benefit the way it could have been if they could have just let go and allowed this space of meditation or deep
Will that single
shallowness.
pointedness of mind, right? Like, as you,
Yes.
if you're able to, let's say, just make sure your mind starts getting single pointedness, even if that's
Yes.
happening for wrong reason initially, wouldn't that start melting the ego eventually?
Yes. And that's why I said that I agree. Compared to someone who doesn't sit at all and their mind is completely scattered and extrovert, it is better that someone is sitting even as a ritual and trying to focus their mind even from the space of doing. It is, Nadine has something to add.
Yeah, I'm just getting stuck at the line where you said you have to sit. You know,
have to sit.
that's what I meant earlier. So for me, someone who is completely doing with full joy something in solitude
Yes.
is for me closer to themselves than someone who's forcing themselves to sit for a meditation. You know,
Yes.
if I meet someone who is truly looking like walking through a forest or is truly working in their garden and really feels that and does that on their own and it's their own joy, that's for me someone who spends more true time with themselves than someone who is very attached to, oh, but I have to do the meditation practice and I have to sit exactly like this because only then I will get the benefit out of it. And my mind has to be still. I cannot think. If I really manage to not think for 15 minutes next time, 20 minutes next time, 30 minutes, then I achieved it.
Yes.
This for me, not like, you know what I mean? That's why I'm saying like, meditation for me is not only to sit in a particular position on a particular blanket in a particular room. For me, meditation, whatever that term means, is that you are actually spending true time with yourself. And that can be anything what that person may feel in that moment. Because if I can share my personal experience with yoga, I also got at times really attached to it that I felt like I need to practice this every day because whatever reasons I felt about it. Then I practiced it one day. It was really hot outside and I felt so dizzy that I tumbled over. And I was like, oh, okay. I was so focused on I want to do the practice that I didn't listen to my body. You know, instead, if I had done something else, that would have been truer. So what I'm trying to say is, don't get stuck on a particular technique that has to be done that way no matter what. Because if you're doing it no matter what and your body is not in line with that, you're actually even harming yourself probably. So
I will say something to that, but I think Shashank has to say something.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think that's, I think I understand Nadine better because I think we're comparing two different sides. Like, if you're like levels, let's say, so you are comparing level 4, let's say, which is higher with level 2, and I'm comparing level 1 with level 2. So when I'm saying somebody is actually not present in the moment, anyways, so for them, even I think just the act of sitting by pure willpower would start melting that identity. But yes, for somebody who can be in the present, and if I agree, for them, it's a better choice to be in the present instead of being in the meditation if they are not doing it willingly. So I think we're just comparing two different sides of like the baseline is different.
Actually,
But I'm saying that,
not even two different sides, Shashank. I think you were very accurate when you said different levels of
yeah,
evolution where you are, right? I think Nadine has probably seen way too many, people who are stuck with their idea of meditation and attached with their meditation practice, even though they have evolved beyond certain point, and it would benefit them if you drop that if they could drop that idea and attachment and be in the moment, no matter where they are. They are not able to bring the benefits of their meditation practice to their lives then. Yes, but Shashank, I agree with you that someone who has never even experienced anything like this, someone who has been absolutely extrovert, and if you tell them, for example, there is some benefit of having someone give someone this space of solitude and watch breath for a few minutes and realize that there can be joy from within, not just from your experiences outside. However, it is very important, again, I'm reiterating Nadine's point, that a guide helps them move forward and tell them, hey, this was just to give you a glimpse that this works, but this need not be limited here. And you must be able, you can be in this state, and you must be able to be in this state with your open eyes and bring this this energy or this presence in your life. So your life becomes mindful, and mindfulness is not just limited to those 20 minutes or couple of hours in a day. So yes, these are both valid points, and I think this will benefit the audience hopefully, because there are different people at different levels. So it's not like sitting must be prohibited, because if you sit, you'll get attached. No, sit, but
No.
understand
Yeah.
that that is not the only way to enter this space of presence. What is important is your state of being, and what Nadine was hinting at. Your beingness is far more important than the physical act. And that's why she pointed out when we are talking about sitting that hey, don't limit it to just sitting. However, yes, to a beginner, it might be useful to find a more quiet space. Yes, if you are advanced, it may not matter. You may be able to be in that meditative space in a market while walking in a noisy market as well. But for a beginner, it might help to find a quiet place. Yes, it might also help to keep their back straight and posture and all of that, because they are all supportive needs.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that clarification. I mean, I didn't want to discourage everyone from sitting and following the technique, obviously. I rather wanted to point to the traps which can be there at times. Yes.
So I agree, because for me, like this was very key in my initial journey to do it regularly. Uh, I was fairly miserable, and then I decided I'll just do this every day, even if it's like I was not disciplined in the sense I thought whatever it takes before I start my day, even if I wake up at 10 a.m., 11 a.m., I'll make sure I'll meditate for 20 minutes, because I was waking at a very erratic times. And what will happen is that if I wake up at 11, I'll be like, I need to rush to my office now. So I'll always not do it. And then I thought, since anyways I'm waking up at these times without any true discretion, then assume you slept half or more. And that discipline initially started melting, like that heaviness and that headiness I had initially before I did this. I was too much in my head, and that was itself a very long journey to, like, there were levels of, and now I'm a little more spontaneous with my meditation, and I want to be more regular, but at least now, yeah. So I think, but I was doing this very willfully, right? Like not through discipline truly, but it was like I really wanted to move forward and improve my life. So I think that's an interesting point which we should be talking. Like there's a word will which is used multiple times, self-will, in the book. And so maybe it's interesting to talk about the significance of that word will here, and how is that different from discipline versus willingness to do something, right? So there is self-control and there is self-will. And it also says your self-will is your enemy, actually, if you're not at the right place. So maybe I think we're talking about that only in a way, that if you can use the will as an enemy also. I think that's what Nadine was saying, and I think I was saying that you can use will as a friend. But I'm just curious what's the book at least trying to say when it says self-will and self-control?
Nadine, you want to say something, or you want me to talk about it? Okay. So, unfortunately, I don't remember the exact Sanskrit term, and we are going into terms. But what I believe it means in this particular context, when it uses the term self-will, is more like egoic intent, actually. And that's why it says that it is not superior. It's more like when you when you go about even spiritual life with egoic ideas, again, sense of achieving something, how it can, what is the right term? It can mess up things, right? So again, more like going from the attitude of doing to non-doing, and more like attitude of surrender and allowing things to happen rather than doing things. So anyone who has been meditating for a while would confirm that their best meditation, or they can feel centered and connected when that energy of doing is not there. So you don't sit there with an intention, or you are not fighting with your mind, but you are allowing things to unfold and happen. That's how I understood the term this
I
time.
can read a passage where it says the will
Sure.
is the only friend of the self, and the will is the only enemy of the self. Those who have conquered themselves, the will is a friend, but it is the enemy of those who have not found self within them.
Yeah, it is a bit poetic, so it is a bit tricky. Sometimes in poetry they use one term in two different contexts, and
Yeah.
especially when we go from phenomenal to non-phenomenal, this becomes even more tricky. So yes, I believe to understand these poetic, uh, passages, one needs a guide or someone who has been practicing this for several years. Yes. So
Mhm.
what I understand from this particular passage is there is an individual will, and then there is a supreme will, the will of your consciousness with capital W. I believe there should be a small w and a capital W in this. Okay. So
Mhm.
the will with small w is your enemy, because that is ego trying to achieve something with ideas. It may have ideas about enlightenment, ideas about spiritual development. And we have all experienced very annoying quote unquote spiritual people who have too many ideas that they shouldn't be ego and I love everyone, but you don't feel that energetically, and you feel it is a facade, and that is a very that is in fact more annoying than someone who doesn't claim anything and who might call themselves a materialist, for example, right? However, uh, if we if we surrender to the supreme will, which would be will with the capital W, and that's what I think the passage meant, that one who has controlled the mind. By that, again, it's not like you as an individual can ever control the mind. It's
Mhm.
paradoxical. It's like when you surrender, you are in this space of witnessing and you're able to see your mind move, and then mind quiets down when it is observed in this way. And that's how you control mind, by not trying to control mind, by letting it be.
Mhm.
Nadine
Exactly.
wants to say something. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I just the content, like I just felt like exactly what meditation for me is also about when you're practicing it. It's really about getting into that observer role, right? And to see what's happening inside you, and not to bring in this resistance or the judgments, etc. It's more about just to see what is, and then it can dissolve in a way, because you're not giving energy so that it's getting bigger, because the moment you're judging, the moment you're resisting, etc., all of this makes the thing bigger and feeds the energy of those thoughts that you actually want to get rid of, right? So if you are
Yes.
managing to be kind of outside them and see them just for what they are, they they're actually going down. I think that's what you meant, no? Like
Yes.
what I
Yes.
understand.
No,
Yeah.
that's what I meant. As you are in this witnessing space and you are more aware of all the feelings and thoughts and intentions, all everything coming up, and you let it be, and you just don't follow it, but you let all these clouds come and process themselves. You see that all this just settles down. And very interestingly, this space of awareness, which is aware of these subtle objects, subtle mind objects, which are very private to you, right? As you go further and keep allowing this space of awareness, which is in the background, turns on itself and it becomes self aware. And that experience is, of course, very holy, and we feel centered with ourselves, and it's beyond words, because there is no object here. See, when we talk about object, we are not only talking about material objects right now. If, for example, you have your eyes closed and you have no thoughts, you have just some feelings and very, very subtle objects here, which are very private to you. We are talking about this space in which now attention has shifted even from these subtle objects, and this space of awareness which was aware of all these objects. Awareness is become
Mhm.
aware of itself, but not as a subject-object relationship. A subject is become self-aware, which is when it happens for the very first time, is for lack of better word, I would say, is earth-shattering. When we have that experience, so to speak, and because it's different than any other experience you have ever had uh, in the phenomenal world, and it is life changing because that is the moment you have the first glimpse, at first absolute glimpse without any doubt now that you are more than body mind. There is something eternal space in you. You're not guessing anymore. You know that firsthand.
And I think the book says at some point at once, is that the same place where it's saying that once you've seen the truth, you will kind of be able to continue better on the path? I am like interpreting it, but it said slightly more strongly that once you have seen the self, then it is like no sorrow will kind of shake you. That was
Oh
the
yeah, I
kind
mean,
of.
I can certainly validate to that because for me it was there was a clear shift. Shift is the right term. It wasn't in my sadhana or practice, I would say. There's a clear shift because before this glimpse of self becoming aware of itself, sadhana was me, Kabir, doing meditation or was on the spiritual path. And then in this moment, Kabir disappears and disappears for so long that you are so clear that here I am, whatever that I is, the formless I, the presence, the life force. And there's no Kabir whatsoever. There's no identity whatsoever. And that is so earth-shattering that I am here and Kabir is not there. The body is there, the thoughts are there, the feelings are there, but identity, the autobiography has completely disappeared. And life force is manifesting. Still, there is hunger, there is conversation, there is operation of mind. Somebody can ask you to make a cup of tea. Life force is operating, but there is no autobiography. And after that, even when the identity came back, because you have seen the disappearance of identity, the only time most people actually, it may not be the right word to say experience disappearing, because it's in the deep sleep. So even during the dream state, there is some form of identity, right? Present. But in the deep sleep, when the identity disappears, for the most of the humanity, they feel they disappear, that nothing is left. There is no awareness. But in deep meditation, the difference, and that's why it's called fourth state also in Upanishads, which is, they say, so awake state, dream state, deep sleep state, and then they say the fourth state is what you'll experience in meditation, which is your identity has disappeared as if it's a sleep state, but all your sense organs are working. So you are more alert than you were ever, more than dream, more than wake up state. You are in your most alert state. The life force is there, but identity disappears. The autobiography absolutely disappears. And I agree with what you said, Shashank, that when after that, even when identity is back and you're operating as identity, you know this is not this is a fake identity and it's a temporary thing. It's not so real. So then there is no suffering because you know that you are more than Nadine, you're more than Shashank. Shashank can go, I will not go. So this, not something can happen to this body, this person, the respect of this person, the social interpretations or judgments of people about this person. You are no more protecting it. You are no more shining the identity. Improving the identity is no more your goal. You find that this space of awareness, who you truly are, is in the background, even when identity is operating. So after that, I feel sadhana is no more being done by Kabir, but Kabir also becomes the object. Like earlier during our journey, we feel I'm the subject. I, as in Shashank, is the subject, and everything else is the object, including my breath and everything. And there's this sense that I am doing sadhana. And then when this I as the noun disappears, you see, oh, everything is just happening. So when there is no I, there is no suffering. I is the one which gets offended. I is the one which gets attached. I is the one who gets hurt. So when there is no I, but this life force and the space of awareness, which feels more like a verb than a noun, then there is no suffering. That's the end of suffering. And that's what they probably meant. That once
Yeah.
you experience this, after that, there is no suffering.
And interestingly, you also covered that it says that you will start seeing everyone, like as same as you, and like you'll treat all the beings equally, even if in the phenomenal world they are, let's say, not working in your favor, or if they're your friends or they're not your friends. And it was very interesting to read that because of such impartiality, such people can rise to big heights.
Yeah,
At this
this can be tricky, but I'll let you
Yeah,
complete
that's what I was
it.
going to ask you. Is my interpretation too phenomenal that this means that somebody's more in this state, since they're impartial, they can just
Yeah,
do better in the phenomenal world? Or is there more
yeah.
depth?
No, yes, this can be really confusing for a beginner. I can absolutely imagine that, because this sounds like a very, what is the right term, Nadine, for those ideas which are very unbelievable, unreal. Um, Sometimes we imagine a world like that. There is
Fantasy.
a fantasy, not really fantasy. Never mind, I'm bad with terms. But you get the idea, right? This feels too unreal. How can I treat someone just like me? Yes. And I think this can be misinterpreted, just like whenever you read sometimes summary of Bhagavad Gita, and many people translate it as, don't worry about results of your action, just focus on your actions and don't worry about the results of your action, right? If we don't want the result, why would we act? So that's not the right translation of Karma Yoga, for example. And we talked about it in the previous
Yeah.
chapters. Yes, you want a goal and that's why you are acting, but you are learning to focus on the process, because that's all you can do. And you have surrendered that, may perhaps if I focus on the process, I'll get the result that I want. But you know at all times that it's not in my hands, right? So that is the more correct understanding. So I think this is something what we need to understand here, the right interpretation of this passage. So when they are talking about the fact that you feel one with everybody else, right? You can't feel one with everybody else as Shashank. You can't feel pain about someone sitting in Africa and suffering, their children suffering malnutrition. You can try to imagine and empathize with them, but it is not at all same as what you would feel if it's happening to your children, right? That is the experience. So we should be very, very, emphatic and realistic about that. I believe what it means is, again, what Krishna is describing is this state when your identity disappears. And then you realize there is no noun. This life force is operating through all these forms, this form, that form, this form, right? And you have that very clear, intuitive experience of that everything is just happening. We are nothing but bundle of sanskaras. There is no noun. It's just expressing itself. And in that state of deep, um, what is the right term here? In that, I might say, a deeply spiritual state, when the egoic mind is completely absent. Yes, you realize that you can move arm of this body and not arm of that body, right? But you realize that the crux in each body is exactly the same life force. To that extent, you are no more now absolutely attached with this body and the profit of this body and loss of this body. You see the temporariness of what is manifesting here, and you realize at some level. Now, when I'm saying you realize, I don't mean you, Nadine. I don't mean you, Shashank. I mean you, the consciousness. And that's what Krishna, when he's saying you realize here, he's talking about you, the deeper consciousness. You, the deeper consciousness, is not affected when he says about the profit and loss. Again, it should be taken in the right context. It doesn't mean that you will go and let someone come and slap you and don't do anything about it. And that's not what is happening anyway on the battlefield. What he means to say is you don't suffer. It's not, you still have your preferences. You still have, you would prefer one thing over the other, but you don't mind if you don't get your way. And that is only possible when you have realized that you are not Shashank, you are more than Shashank. And then it's okay. Just like you can allow your neighbor to lose their car and you are able to calm them down. It's okay. It's okay. It was just a car, but at least you are safe. But when we lose our car, when the I is involved, there is a very different energy to it because there is sense of attachment. So now that part has disappeared. So you are able to deal with Shashank just like you dealt with your neighbor. Say it's okay. It was a car. It's gone. So we have all experienced it in different ways, in the sense that we have all experienced in our journey that, oh, I'm able to accept the loss much easier than I used to before I had started on this journey. I don't know how, but somehow I'll come back to the center place, come back to this place of acceptance. It happens very intuitively. It is not just logical that I logically tell myself. At the level of feeling itself, we feel this sense of acceptance and coming back to this equanimity, which is another term which is used in this chapter. Does it help? I know it was subtle, so I don't know if I was able to communicate.
Yeah, Nadine, I think you want to go ahead and talk about certain aspects uh, like yeah, for me, if you don't have a question, I have this specific shlok which says when, and this is now the context here is that Arjuna asks that, what if I don't have self-control, and and if I'm not able to make it, then do I end up being on this path and not even enjoying this lifetime truly? Like in his own context, he's saying, am I in nowhere land? And then Krishna says that, know that this, whatever you do here will continue, will help you in your journey ahead. Um, and then he says that when such people die, they go to other realms where the righteous live. They dwell there for countless years and then are reborn into home which is pure and prosperous. So I'm actually very literally want to understand, when they say they go to other realms where the righteous live, and it's okay if you don't want to go into those
No,
terms here, but I'm just
I don't
curious,
know.
yeah, what does it mean? You go to other realms where the righteous live and you dwell there for countless years.
Sure. I mean, again, like you said, some people might be uncomfortable because we can't experience this and we can just take it as a proposal, something which Krishna is saying, right? But even Buddha talked about it, that how consciousness takes forms in various dimensions, and this planet and this space-time dimension is just one of those dimensions, and how when Krishna here is talking about that if you are even trying to live a contemplative life, it is so powerful, and how he emphatically says that it is so much more powerful even just to inquire about it than to just live ritualistic life. So anybody who is sincerely trying to live this contemplative life, trying to go beyond their mind, trying to, uh, you may say, melt their egoic mind or ignorance within them, uh, they actually are born in other realms. He has not specified in this particular shloka, but Buddha talked about, he called it heavenly realms, basically where you don't suffer as a being as much. And he calls it almost like fruits of your action, of contemplative action. So sometimes Buddha would say that living this life will don't compromise on this. Give priority to this, because it's yes, of course, you will get the results of contemplative life, of living in presence immediately on this planet, but you will get it beyond this lifetime also when you take a different birth, when your consciousness takes a different form. And now this is also very interestingly said both by Buddha and in Upanishads, by Krishna. Somehow consciousness doesn't necessarily evolve in dimensions which are called heavenly realms or hellish realms mostly, because in hellish realms there is way too much suffering and it can't contemplate. And in heavenly realms, because there is no challenge, there is no need to contemplate. So when Buddha described about these realms, he talks about in heavenly realms, the moment you get a desire, it manifests. And so it's for most of the beings in those realms, they don't have motivation. So coming to this earthly realm and taking the form of a human being that's why considered very unique. And in Bible they say that God loves human beings the most. What does it mean? Why not other animals? Why not other forms? Why not all other dimensions? And because a lot of whom I found genuine spiritual sages have somehow given more importance to human life form, because there is a mix. It has some limitations, but you are not in suffering all the time. Your life is not just for a few minutes. Your life is not eternal here. So there is a sense that you are going to die. Somehow they all say that human birth is a very fit birth for the consciousness to evolve. So I understand this passage from all those contexts when Krishna says that, okay, you may go to another realm for a while until your consciousness can find a perfect household, perfect parents, perfect environment where it can come and continue the journey of contemplative journey and evolve further. So I don't know how much more you want to go there, but this was the background which I understand.
Yeah, I find that very true also what you said, Kabir. Like, so if you're reaching that consciousness state and you feel that oneness with everything, that also means you open up your inner wisdom to things around you that you can't know in that sense from our material world that we're living in, our collective mindset, what we're born into, society, etc., which is very limited. So if you're reaching to really recognize within you that consciousness, then it's what you said, also time drops and even your physical boundary drops. I mean, that's what I at least experience in yoga or meditation, or even when I do something where I feel true joy, actually doesn't matter what it is. Then I feel I'm beyond my physical body even, because then I feel like I'm expanding, then I'm connected with everything. And I think this is what this consciousness, what we're trying to bring out of us through the practice of meditation or yoga, etc., is that we actually get into that. That's why we are having in our real experience also these moments where something feels like endless and other things feel like time is not passing by or time is going too fast. What does it mean also when parents are saying, oh, my children, they grew up too fast? Yes. What does it mean? What did they miss out? Because there is like, like it's about how consciously do you experience your togetherness with others or with yourself. And I think if you're truly able to do that, then time is also expanding, then yourself is also expanding. And then you can even connect to other realms, then you're not only here in your physical mind that has the classical few senses. What you also said, Kabir, there's maybe a state of deep sleep, a state of dream, a state of your regular identity-driven life. But then there's another one. And how to get there and integrate this so that you're actually fully experiencing life in the moment. That's what I think this is all about. That's what the Bhagavad Gita is probably about, and trying to tell us with Krishna within us to guide us to that path.
Beautifully put.
Well, do you mind like sharing, just seeing your conviction on this? I was just curious that have you actually experienced this also yourself, like, and specifically in terms of other realm or something, like when you say in the fourth state in your meditation, did you have some experiences? I know most of the books, like you don't want to go too much into this direction, generally speaking, as because sometimes this can be more interesting to talk about. But I'm just curious, like,
Yeah, I'm
uh,
practicing it actively, and I'm not practicing this only in yoga and meditation. Like I'm also practicing that when I go out, when I meet, like in fact, I'm also in another group with a few people where we are practicing it with each other. You know, how can you connect with each other? How can you feel what's going on in the other one? Or how can you, like sometimes we're even practicing it with photos, you know, you're looking at a photo and you're trying to perceive what's happening there. Like you're training that sense of that consciousness through
wow.
different means so that you get really there. And then if you have others that practice that with you, you're also getting, you know, that sense of, oh, okay, this is really true, because often we are not trusting ourselves if things can't be proven. You know,
Hmm.
like the moment where science can't prove something, people are backing out. And
Yeah.
that's very sad, because just because science may not prove your consciousness of being connected with everything or being able to channel into some wisdom that you can't have, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that science is not at that level. So I think we humans are much more capable in our being and in our consciousness than any material science is there. Like they're lacking behind. So I feel people also need to get more trust in themselves. What they experience is also true. So, and then build on that, and yeah, practice that.
Yeah.
I
That
believe,
makes sense.
Shashank, you have had enough experiences. I remember you sharing how uh, how the intuition operates and the coincidences happen.
Oh, yeah.
They are beyond all laws of
Yes.
probability, and we
Oh,
all know that. And for people who are, I know, could be cynical and want to look at more scientific data on it, they can Google PSI research, which is happening in so many European and US universities now. They call it PSI. I forgot the full form for it. But yes, this is the paranormal activity, and they are recording it in a very scientific way and controlling all the environment. And I have read some of the data which comes out of it. And this is beyond, again, all the laws of probability. And they can't explain it through physical senses. So they are
Right.
at least starting to acknowledge it enough to be doing research onto it and giving offering PhDs on this. This is
Yeah.
something worth looking at, because, like Nadine said, that you can't, if you're a true scientist, you can't close your eyes. If there is a possibility where consciousness is able to access, if I may use the term, access data or communicate or receive or feel things which are beyond the senses, science still is not able to explain it, but it at least is starting to accept it, that this is something we don't understand.
And can I just add to that, because I read that recently and I found it really nice. You know, be your own scientist. If you have this urge to have scientific fulfillment, then study yourself. You know,
Yes.
study yourself and be open to it. Because if you want to be a so-called scientist, then you have to be open to find something new.
Yeah.
And that's where people, I feel, often also go when they argue with science. Then I feel they actually are not scientists in that sense, because you're closing the door if you're referring to things which are there. But if you have a feeling there's something beyond, study it yourself and be open to what you find there. And I think that's beautiful to, you know, being open for other possibilities. I mean, science and results as of today, they are important, they guide us somewhere, but we also know I'm a nutritionist by training and I have studied it. And over these 5 years of university, you can't imagine how often recommendations, the thresholds for how much vitamin D you should have, for how much of this you should have. You know, a year later they revise it and then they say, no, actually it's like a bit more, it's a bit less. And then you're like, okay, so if this can change within 5 years so many times, what does it mean in science? You know, it's always the perspective you're choosing. And that's why I learned now that it's important to listen to yourself and find also what resonates with you. And here it's important, not what resonates with your conditioned being, but with your true self, what they are talking about in this chapter, right? This is where we want to be linked with and gain our wisdom from.
Yeah. And I think that also takes some time. The point you said about what truly resonates with you versus your condition, that takes some time to,
Yeah.
the more you're present, and the meditation kind of helps you figure out what is true self and what is the conditioned self. But by the way, when you're talking about studying yourself as science, I think in India, rishis were basically people who were called scientists in our time, and they were the ones who were just sitting within themselves. And like there's a lot of research which is available in Indian books way before all the instruments were available. And I think most of it is just done by looking inside versus looking outside. But yeah, I thought that to be interesting. All right. I think, Kavi, do you want to add anything? Like, I think we could to probably just talk like last thing about self-control, or maybe like what is meditation, like at least for somebody who's still like the single pointedness, because there's so many different like ways you can probably describe meditation, but as maybe your definition of meditation, and then we close the session.
All right. I would, to a beginner, I would say give it a shot. And yes, to begin with, if you have never, if you feel I have no idea what they are talking about, I would suggest, yes, try to follow a guided meditation. Try to be at a place where you can be at solitude. It will help if you can be in a sitting posture with closed eyes to begin with, and follow some of the guidances which make life easier, in the sense which calms down your senses and calms down your mind, which is helped a lot by the practice of concentration. What does it mean by practice of concentration? Usually you are given an object of meditation. Either it could be a visual, or it could be a mantra, or it could be just your breath, which was recommended by Buddha actually, was rather favored by Buddha, your own natural breath. So you use this object to train your attention to be on that one object. Usually our mind, our attention tends to be quite extrovert and erratic. It wants to jump from one thing to another thing to another thing. By doing that, it is not able to get insights. A person whose mind is always erratic and extroverted have very little self-insights about themselves. Their ideas and belief system or conditioning pretty much decide their worldview. There is no space for anything coming from this intuitive space because there's just too much noise. Or if we may use the metaphor that there is too many dark clouds and sunlight is not able to come in even though it's out there. So when you sit and give yourself a chance, I would use the term that give meditation a chance to work for you. Give yourself that opportunity by perhaps finding a retreat if possible, or finding the space for a few minutes of solitude, and try to focus on your breath. And as your attention slips away, going on to the other things, you may perhaps gently, without guilt, without the sense of too much effort or being at work, gently bring it back to that object of meditation slowly and repeatedly. It just allows those clouds to settle down and some light to shine. And you intuitively start feeling, experiencing that, oh my God, I didn't eat an ice cream, I didn't have sex, there was nothing pleasurable. why am I feeling so good after these 15 minutes? Why am I feeling lighter? Once you start getting taste from within, then as you go further on, as Nadeem mentioned, it will be good then to realize that you can be in this space, not just in this controlled environment, but at all times. And it can become your way of life eventually.
Very beautifully put. So thank you for joining, everyone. Hopefully you are enjoying some of these sessions. Do give us any comments on how we can improve these for you. And we'll see you soon again. Bye.
Thank you so much, Ishan. Thanks,
Bye.
Thank you.
see you guys.
Thanks for that exchange.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Have a nice evening.
You too. Bye.
Bye.